Have you ever set a goal, felt motivated at the beginning, but then lost steam a few weeks later? Maybe it was going to the gym, learning a language, or even saving money. You wanted to change, but somehow the old patterns came back. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." In other words, it's not the big dreams that shape our lives. It's the small systems, the tiny habits we repeat every day. And here's the surprising part. If you improve by just 1% every single day, after 1 year, you'll be 37 times better. That's the power of habits. To really understand why habits are so powerful, let's look at a story from British cycling. For decades, the British cycling team was a joke in the sports world. They hadn't won the Tour de France, and even bike manufacturers didn't want to sell to them because they thought the association would hurt sales. Then came a new performance director, Dave Brailsford. Instead of chasing one big breakthrough, he focused on what he called the aggregation of marginal gains. Every tiny improvement counted. Adjusting the seats for more comfort, redesigning bike tires for better grip, even teaching cyclists the best way to wash their hands to avoid catching colds. Each change was just 1%. But when you add up hundreds of these little improvements, the result is huge. Within a few years, Team Sky, once the laughingstock, won the Tour de France, not just once, but 5 times in 6 years. That's the power of tiny habits. James Clear compares habits to compound interest. Just like money multiplies when you invest it, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. Good habits compound to build success. Bad habits compound to create problems. Think about this. If a plane takes off from Los Angeles heading to New York, but the nose is just a few degrees off, it won't land in New York. It might end up in Washington, D.C. instead. A small shift, repeated over time, leads to a very different destination. That's exactly what habits do in our lives. Every choice we make sets the direction of our flight path. And that's why James Clear created the 4 laws of behavior change, so we can design habits that carry us to the future we want. So how do we actually build these habits? How do we make sure they stick? James Clear says the first step is to make it obvious, and that's where we begin. Part 1. Make it obvious. The first law of behavior change is simple. Make it obvious. Most of the time, we don't fail to change because we lack motivation. We fail because our habits are invisible. They run on autopilot. Think about it. You don't consciously decide to check your phone. You just do it. You don't remind yourself to brush your teeth. You just walk into the bathroom and it happens. Habits are the brain's way of saving energy. Once a pattern is learned, your mind stops thinking, and the cue triggers the action automatically. That's why James Clear says, if you want to change your habits, the first step is not motivation, but awareness. The Japanese train station story. Let me give you a fascinating example. In Japan, train operators use a system called pointing and calling. Whenever they approach a signal, they literally point at it and say out loud, "Signal green." If they're at the platform, they point at the clock and announce, "Time confirmed." It may look silly from the outside, but studies show it reduces mistakes by up to 85%, and accidents by 30%. Why? Because pointing and calling raises awareness. It forces the brain to notice what it might otherwise do automatically. In the same way, we need to call out our habits. James Clear recommends something called the habit scorecard. You simply write down your daily routine step by step. Wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee, scroll social media, drive to work. Then, beside each one, you mark it as good, bad, or neutral. The goal is not to judge yourself, but to see yourself clearly. Because once you see your habits, you can start to change them. Implementation intention, but noticing is not enough. The next step is making your desired habit obvious. One of the most powerful techniques is called an implementation intention. Instead of vaguely saying, "I'll exercise more," you write down a specific formula. I will behavior at time in location. For example, I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room. Or, I will study English for 20 minutes after lunch in my office. Research shows that people who write down these clear plans are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through. Why? Because the cue is obvious. You know exactly when and where it happens. Habit stacking. And here's another powerful method: habit stacking. This is where you attach a new habit to an existing one. Instead of trying to squeeze a new habit into your chaotic day, you link it to something you already do. The formula is, after I, current habit, I will, new habit. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will write down one thing I'm grateful for. Or, after I brush my teeth at night, I will floss one tooth. Sounds tiny, right? But that's the point. The existing habit becomes the anchor, the trigger. And because the cue is so obvious, the new habit sticks. Environment design. Now, here's the big one. Environment shapes behavior. We like to think we're in control of our choices, but in reality, our surroundings guide us more than we realize. If you see cookies on the counter, you'll probably eat them. If the TV remote is on the table, you'll probably watch Netflix. James Clear says, "You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment." That's why the most practical way to change habits is to redesign your environment. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit on the kitchen counter and hide the chips in the cupboard. Want to read more? Place a book on your pillow every morning so you see it before bed. Want to practice guitar? Put it in the middle of the living room instead of the closet. When the cue is visible, the habit becomes obvious. So here's the takeaway. Habits don't start with motivation, they start with cues. If you make the cues obvious, through awareness, clear plans, stacking, and environment design, you make good habits almost automatic. But here's the question. Even if you make the habit obvious, how do you actually want to do it? That's where the second law comes in. Make it attractive. The second law of behavior change is this: make it attractive. Think about it. We don't just do things because they're good for us. We do them because we want to. That's why most people struggle with habits like exercising, studying, or saving money. These actions are useful, but they don't always feel rewarding in the moment. The key is to rewire how we see them, so that good habits become appealing and bad habits lose their charm. The dopamine effect. Let's start with your brain. Every time you anticipate a reward, your brain releases a chemical called dopamine. It's not just when you get the reward, it's when you expect it. That's why scrolling social media is so addictive. Every time you pick up your phone, you don't know what's coming. A funny video, a message from a friend, a breaking news update. That unpredictability spikes dopamine. James Clear points out that if we want to make habits attractive, we have to tap into this same system. In other words, we need to pair our desired habits with something we enjoy. Temptation bundling. One method is called temptation bundling. Here's how it works. You combine something you want to do with something you need to do. For example, only watch your favorite Netflix show while you're exercising on the treadmill. Only listen to your favorite podcast when you're cleaning the house. Only drink your favorite coffee when you sit down to study. This way, the good habit borrows the attractiveness of the reward. Suddenly, working out isn't just about burning calories. It's about catching the next episode of your show. The Irish Electric Company story. Here's a fascinating case study. A company in Ireland was trying to get people to save energy. Instead of just telling customers, use less electricity, they sent reports comparing each household's usage to their neighbors. If your usage was higher than average, the report showed a sad face. If it was lower, you got a happy face. Believe it or not, this simple social comparison changed behavior dramatically. People started using less energy, not because they suddenly cared more about the planet, but because it became socially attractive to be in the happy face group. The lesson? We're wired to copy the people around us. We imitate the habits of three groups: the close, the many, and the powerful. If we surround ourselves with people who value fitness, learning, or discipline, those habits become more attractive. Reframing habits. Another powerful strategy is reframing. The way you describe a habit can change how attractive it feels. Instead of saying, "I have to work out," try saying, "I get to move my body and become stronger." Instead of, "I have to cook dinner," say, "I get to prepare a healthy meal that fuels me." Small language shifts matter. They change the story in your head, and over time, your brain learns to associate the habit with positivity. Making bad habits unattractive. On the flip side, you can also make bad habits unattractive by reframing them. Smoking isn't taking a break. It's damaging my lungs one puff at a time. Procrastination isn't waiting until I feel ready. It's stealing from my future self. The clearer you are about the real cost of a bad habit, the less attractive it becomes. Environment, again, the social factor. Remember how in part 1 we talked about redesigning your physical environment? In part 2, it's about your social environment. If everyone around you eats fast food, it's hard to eat clean. If your friends spend weekends drinking, it's tough to build a morning routine. But if you join a running club, suddenly jogging at 6 a.m. feels normal, even attractive, because it's what the group does. James Clear sums it up like this: one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. So the second law is about making habits attractive through dopamine, temptation bundling, social influence, and reframing. If a habit feels rewarding, you'll keep coming back. But there's still a problem. Even if a habit is obvious and attractive, it won't stick unless it's easy to do. That's where the third law comes in. Make it easy. The third law of behavior change is simple but powerful. Make it easy. Most people think success comes from motivation or willpower. But James Clear argues that success comes from reducing friction. The easier a habit is to start, the more likely it is to stick. Why difficulty kills habits. Think about the habits you've failed to keep. Maybe you planned to run every morning, but your shoes were in the closet and your running clothes were in the laundry. Maybe you wanted to eat healthy, but fast food was just down the street. Every little barrier increases friction, and the higher the friction, the lower the follow-through. The opposite is also true. Make a habit frictionless, and it becomes almost automatic. The 2-minute rule. One of James Clear's most practical tools is the 2-minute rule. It says, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. That sounds almost silly, but it works because it lowers the barrier. Want to start reading more? Read just 1 page. Want to run regularly? Put on your running shoes. Want to meditate? Sit down and take 2 deep breaths. The point is not to stop after 2 minutes. The point is to master the art of showing up. Once you start, it's much easier to keep going. Gateway habits. These tiny 2-minute habits are what Clear calls gateway habits. They lead naturally to bigger ones. Reading 1 page often becomes reading 10. Putting on your shoes often leads to a jog. Writing 1 sentence can turn into finishing an article. The magic is in lowering the resistance. By making the first step ridiculously easy, you create momentum. Environment design. Friction matters. We talked earlier about designing your environment to make good habits obvious. In this law, it's about making them easy. Want to practice guitar? Keep it on a stand in the middle of the living room instead of in the case. Want to eat more fruit? Put apples and bananas in a visible bowl on the counter. Want to drink more water? Keep a bottle on your desk at all times. On the flip side, make bad habits hard. Hide the junk food on the top shelf, or don't buy it at all. Delete social media apps from your phone so you can only check them on your laptop. Unplug the TV or remove batteries from the remote so you have to put in effort to binge. Repetition over perfection. Another insight from Atomic Habits is that motion beats perfection. People waste too much time trying to plan the perfect workout, the perfect schedule, or the perfect routine. Clear says, stop planning, just start. In fact, he shares a story about a photography class. The teacher divided students into 2 groups. One group was graded on the quantity of photos they took. The other group was graded on the quality of a single photo. The result? The quantity group actually produced better photos. Why? Because they practiced more. They experimented, learned, adjusted, and improved. Meanwhile, the quality group sat around theorizing. The lesson is simple. Focus on repetition, not perfection. Habits grow stronger through frequency, not intensity. Automation, the ultimate shortcut. And then there's automation, removing the need for choice altogether. If you want to save money, set up an automatic transfer to your savings account. If you want to exercise, sign up for a class that charges you if you don't show up. If you want to eat healthier, sign up for a meal plan delivery service. Automation makes habits stick because it eliminates decision fatigue. You don't have to think about it. The system does the work for you. Real-life example: Amazon's one-click. Think about Amazon's one-click buy button. It turns shopping from a multi-step process into a single tap. Sales skyrocketed. Why? Because they made it easy. The same principle applies to your habits. Remove steps, reduce effort, and shorten the path between you and the desired behavior. So that's the third law. Make it easy. Start with the 2-minute rule. Design your environment for frictionless habits. Focus on repetition over perfection, and automate whenever possible. But even with easy habits, you still need a reason to keep going. And that's where the final law comes in. Make it satisfying. The final law of behavior change is this: make it satisfying. Why? Because human beings are wired for instant rewards. If a habit feels good in the moment, we're more likely to repeat it. If it feels bad, we avoid it. The trick is to design your habits so that good behaviors are rewarding now, not just someday in the future. The problem of delayed gratification. Most good habits have a long-term reward, but short-term pain. Exercising today won't give you a six-pack tomorrow. It gives you sore muscles. Saving money now won't make you rich instantly. It just means less spending today. Eating vegetables doesn't give you an immediate thrill. It just prevents disease years down the line. On the other hand, bad habits are the opposite. They feel good now but hurt later. Smoking relaxes you in the moment but damages your lungs. Junk food tastes amazing but harms your health. Scrolling on your phone is entertaining now but steals hours of your life. This mismatch is why it's so hard to build good habits and so easy to fall into bad ones. How to reverse the equation. James Clear's solution is simple. Make good habits immediately satisfying and make bad habits immediately unsatisfying. For example, if you want to save money, track your progress visually. Use a chart, a jar you fill with coins, or an app that shows your growing balance. The instant feedback feels good. If you want to exercise, give yourself a small reward afterward. A smoothie, a hot shower, or even just crossing off the workout on your calendar. If you want to eat healthier, focus on how light and energized you feel after a good meal. Train your brain to notice the short-term benefits. Habit tracking. The power of visual progress. One of the best tools is a habit tracker. Simply mark an X on your calendar every time you complete a habit. As the chain of X's grows longer, you'll feel motivated to keep it going. Nobody wants to break the streak. Jerry Seinfeld, the famous comedian, used this exact method to improve his writing. Every day he wrote jokes. He put a big red X on his wall calendar. His only rule: don't break the chain. That visual progress became its own reward. Immediate consequences for bad habits. You can also design punishments for bad habits. If you waste time online, install an app that blocks social media after 30 minutes. If you skip a workout, make a deal with a friend. You owe them $10 each time. If you smoke a cigarette, tell someone you care about that you failed. The shame itself becomes a deterrent. By attaching an immediate negative consequence, you flip the script. The role of identity. But maybe the most satisfying reward of all is identity. Every time you follow through on a habit, you're not just doing an action, you're becoming a kind of person. Each time you write, you are a writer. Each time you train, you are an athlete. Each time you save, You are a financially responsible person. This identity-based satisfaction is deeper and longer lasting than any small external reward. It's about proving something to yourself. Real-life example: Fitbit and Apple Watch. One of the best demonstrations of make it satisfying is the rise of wearable technology like Fitbit and Apple Watch. These devices don't just track your steps or heart rate, they turn healthy behaviors into a rewarding experience. Every time you complete a run or close your daily activity rings, you get an immediate visual confirmation of success. The bright colors, cheerful animations, and achievement badges act as small but powerful rewards. This is not only psychological, it's behavioral science in action. The human brain is wired to seek immediate rewards. Even though the long-term benefit of exercise or better sleep might take weeks or months to notice, the instant celebration from your watch bridges that gap. A simple vibration on your wrist or a digital badge can make you feel accomplished right away, motivating you to repeat the behavior tomorrow. Wearables also introduce social accountability. Many users share their activity progress with friends or compete in step challenges. This social element adds another layer of satisfaction. You're not just achieving for yourself, you're also keeping up with others. That makes the habit stick even more firmly. In short, Fitbit and Apple Watch succeed because they transform invisible progress into visible, satisfying rewards. They show us that when habits feel rewarding in the moment, they're far more likely to become a lasting part of our identity. Bringing it all together. So here's the fourth law: make it satisfying. Reward yourself instantly for good habits, track your progress, create consequences for bad habits, and connect everything to your identity. When a habit feels rewarding today, not just tomorrow, it becomes a loop you actually want to repeat. And that's the secret to lasting change. Closing the book. Atomic Habits in one sentence. Let's zoom out. The whole book boils down to this: small habits, repeated consistently, lead to remarkable results. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Do these 4 things, and your habits and your life will change. So as you finish listening today, don't just think about habits in theory. Pick one small change, apply the 4 laws, and start today. Remember, habits are not about big goals. They're about becoming the type of person who naturally lives the life you want. And if you stick with it, you'll look back a year from now amazed at how far you've come. All from the power of atomic habits. Thanks for listening. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss the next big idea. And I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know which book you'd like us to explore next.